It is. It's just more on training and roadblocks and things. A couple of things. I'm going to be recording this, and it will be made available to the public via, the website and YouTube and those kind of things. We don't have millions of people dropping in, but just letting you know and giving you the right. If you don't want that to happen, please let me know. And Heidi, I'll be probably showing some of the things you shared with us from your group there.
Sure.
If anybody is not okay with that, let me know. And what we can do is we can record the things we can record and put them on, and then we'll share the other stuff later. Okay? If nobody is saying no way, then we will begin. Hey. Are y'all, look at you, you all got yourselves muted and everything except Robin. Robin's gonna, because Robin has COVID, as you know, so she's gonna be coughing and not really. Everybody doing good? Anybody got anything bad going on? All right. Well, when I sent out the email, and this is kind of what I went over in my head, how to use our hour today. Periodically, and I think probably at these things pretty regularly, and I said periodically, but actually pretty regularly, we might start off with people talking about roadblocks they're having, something that's in the way, and kind of address that, give everybody a chance to hear it. If you don't have it now, you may have it later, similar thing. And look at some quick answers to existing issues. Then, as I said, I want to continue on with what we're doing with the training processes that we hope to be able to use and build strong staffs, et cetera. Okay, everybody good for that? All right, then let me open the floor. Does anybody have a roadblock? Think about what where you're going and what you want it to do, and share with us something that you're having trouble with. What's your next step? Who wants to go first? Nobody's going to jump out there. Nancy, you're raising your eyebrow.
So I set a goal with my CEO. We do these heartbeat check-ins, and I set a goal. Oh, by the way, there are a few faces I haven't met yet. My name is Nancy. I'm a part of a private practice in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in Texas, and we are looking to add, we've got the whole middle continuum of care, and got some good ideas last time about an idea for residential that's essentially PHP with boarding. And then the piece that I'm looking at is the APG in the community. And we have nothing going yet. And so I set a goal with my CEO that I would get something up and running between now and next month, even if it's just, a few people and wing it, because as John said, the best way to start is just to start. And but that's I'm an overpreparer. So then my biggest roadblock is just find the clients, do the thing, right? So that's where I am.
All right. So anybody got a suggestion? Anybody passed this before? And by the way, remember that this is a case where you've got clinical. What we talked about last week was developing clinical from an APG, but this is a little bit different. They got clinical and they're going to develop APG. Robin is involved with some things that are very similar to that up in Washington. Is that right, Robin? Is that who you're talking to? Am I right?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out the best way to do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so both of y'all, this makes sense, and probably you guys from New Hampshire, you'll have some situations like that because you have a lot of clinical elements that are in place. The way to get it going, you actually hit it right on the head. This is my experience anyway. You pick out somebody, you pick out two rooms, all right? And you say, we're going to have a meeting at 7:30 for two Zoom spots. It doesn't have to be rooms, depending on what your situation is. Say, we're going to have a meeting at 7:30. I suggest Tuesdays and Thursdays are your best nights, by the way. And we've learned that over the years. Friday night can be really, really good if it's a big deal because everybody's ready to celebrate. But if you have your regular get down, let's talk turkey type meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Fridays can be, yeah, now let's all go to the movie once they, well, or go do whatever, that kind of. Pick the people, pick somebody that'll work, be able to run. And you actually, to start it, you can only pick one if you want. Pick a night, pick one room. At 7:30, we're going to have our first AAPG meeting. Okay? Get it out there. Talk to some people personally so that they can't look in the eye unless they come from that point on. Not to be manipulative or anything.
Everything's manipulation in a way.
This is engaging, Get them to come, have the meeting, and what you do at that first one, you talk about what your plans are, how they fit in, those kinds of things. Bang, you're started. It is that simple. All right. Other ideas, people who have started things to get it going. No? Okay. You think that'll help, Nancy? All right.
Yeah.
Who else has a roadblock that they're looking at right now? Okay. Well, remember that let me ask you a question, okay? How many of the programs that you have residential, alternative school, IOP, day treatment, sober living for the adult programs, okay? Adult program, APGs, over 25. People who work with EAPs, law enforcement folks, drug courts, and those kind of things to help with the facility. How many of y'all have all that? If you don't, you got roadblocks. Okay? Because when this is done and done thoroughly, you will have all of that. It'll all be tied together. You'll either have in the clinical elements, you'll either have the relationships or it will be yours. You own it, run it, however you want to look at it. But if you don't have those things, you want them. I promise you want them. It'll make it much easier for the clients and for you. It makes it all run a lot smoother if you have it all. Anything you don't have is a dent in the continuity of care system, a little bit of a bump. So when one of the things I'm suggesting to you then, and in this part of this call, is to take some time and on your strategy list, remember how cool it can be. Remember all you can have and start thinking, what are we going to develop next? Those kind of things. And that way, yeah, you can always be moving forward and adding to things. Okay. All right. So what is going on? Somebody else share with us a little bit.
So John, I have a question, I guess. So I'm Heidi Kluter. I haven't met any of you. This is my first meeting.
Please tell everybody who you are and what you're doing.
So I'm Zooming from New Hampshire, from the Creating Connections New Hampshire project. We're standing up APGs and youth peer support services as we develop a continuum of treatment and recovery supports in New Hampshire. And so Sean is the project director for that project. And I've been working directly with, over the past 4 months or so, we've really been working on designing and outlining what alternative peer groups would look like in New Hampshire. And one of the things that continues to come up as a barrier, and we haven't implemented yet, is our just billing, and I know that I've talked to several organizations individually, about this, but you know, our Medicaid regulations say that you know, are pretty loose in that they allow for you know, Medicaid billing, but then we get these concerns from individual organizations. You know, I got an email this morning from one of our interested organizations that's looking at piloting alternative peer groups from um, uh, um, you know, with essentially like a rejection letter saying services not eligible for reimbursement. Um, uh, you know, and it has a line in here that says services performed by a non-licensed practitioner who cannot practice independently or is not actively working towards professional licensure. But the Medicaid regulations say that peer support specialists are fine providing and billing under Medicaid. And so I'm just wondering if any of you have had any luck dealing with
Medicaid?
Medicaid or in particular, you know, private insurance or anything along those lines, just so that, you know, we have some grant funds right now to stand up APGs, and my concern is that they won't be sustainable in the long term if we can't figure out the funding piece.
Yeah. Some of us have had experiences, some of them really bad experiences, some horrific experiences, and then some where they provided a great deal of help to people we couldn't touch any other way, you know, with Medicaid specifically, as well as other third party. It's been going on forever. Well, I take that back. Beginning about 1992, insurance companies decided they were going to dodge anything and everything they could having to do with paying for treatment. Any way they could to have to pay for treatment, as treatment should be designed for this disease. Medicaid followed suit in 1997. At that time, I was running a program. It was the largest Medicaid program in Texas. We had 1,800 active, being paid for clients. Managed care moved into the public sector, and in one day I had to discharge 1,800 clients. The services were being delivered by people who were in process. They were, you know, the mid-level certifications, the interns and those kind of things. They were all certified and licensed along those lines and had the correct supervision and the whole thing. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you the bad side first, all right? When you're that big and working with that many people, and there is a lot of political hubbub going on, and there's a new system where private care is moving into the public sector and they're trying to take over, you are a absolute mark to be that's what I'm looking for, accused of Medicaid fraud. Okay, I have a huge warehouse full of records, and the program was accused of fraud. No charges were ever filed. It was all public type stuff, public jab and a newspaper article and those kind of things. But in that process, the FBI came out and took 6 huge filing cabinets, I mean huge ones, and kept them for 6 years. It was a nightmare. I will tell you, I had 2 little kids. There's no money in Medicaid for anybody. Well, if you're doing it right, nobody's going to make money, but you can finance programs, you know? So here's the good news. 6 years later, they bring it all back and say, we can't find anything wrong. In the meantime, of course, it was just a nightmare living through it and all, because it's the government and that kind of thing. That's the bad news, is that can happen. And they're a lot worse. Medicaid is the government. They're a lot worse than private insurance. Private insurance is not the government. They're just big money. Medicaid is the government, and yeah, it can get really nasty. Now, the reason why they brought everything back, said they couldn't find anything, because there wasn't anything. All right. Thank God we had the records we had. Thank God we had followed by, you know, the scope of practice. We were scoped to practice in Texas, be able to treat either people who with the disease or family member, and that includes siblings. So we were working with whole families in this model. They took exception to that, just like they're taking exception to something in this case of yours, but in fact it held up. And thank God we had videotaped our, the sessions where you go over the cases, our supervision session, and made sure that it all followed suit and mixed up with it. I don't mean to scare you. I do mean to warn you. All right. Medicaid, it can be very, very tough to get better get. Very, very tough to deal with them. All right. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to touch the low socioeconomic population and fund it. I'm part of an anti-racist group. In fact, I have a meeting later on, and we talk about, and the association is part of this group, and talking about why do we have so much trouble continuing to reach out to the low socioeconomic, areas. And it always comes down to exactly what I saw everybody's head shake. We've got funding. What if it goes away? And that is what happens one way or another. Medicaid can go away. Grants can go away. In the movie Generation Found, the one thing that was not correct in that movie is actually APGs have addressed low socioeconomic areas I just told you a story about one, and it acted like that hadn't happened. It has happened. Every time we've PDAP reached out and addressed low socioeconomic areas, but then lost funding. Every time we do it, we lose funding, and then we have to start all over again. But I got to tell you, we have the same problems with the middle and upper middle class programs too. They get funded, and then the funding falls off for one reason or another.
So John, can I just jump in and follow up with a question for Rich? So Rich had posted in the chat that RSPS can bill Medicaid, but PRSS cannot, and that you're standing up a certification course. So we actually just had a meeting yesterday to talk about certifying our youth peer support specialists. So can you talk a little bit just about that process and what that looked like for RISE Recovery?
Yeah, and if anybody didn't hear, I'm having my air conditioning unit replaced right now. It's been a couple of days without AC in San Antonio, and so it's pretty loud here. And so I'll try to be brief. Currently, right now, Cicada is the only certifying place here in San Antonio for folks to get certified as either RSPS or PRSS. And so we saw that as an opportunity to kind of not only keep our staff current, but to offer a place where an alternative for people to come to get certified. And so I've tasked my training coordinator. She oversees everything as far as staff training to practicums, folks that want to do their internships with us. And so we looked around to find places that were certifying agencies, and I can give you all that information after this meeting. And I'll put you in touch with Liz, and we'll share everything that we've got with you. But we struggled with the first organization. COVID kind of shut them down, and they were actually our preferred choice to get certified through. But they just stopped responding, and we went a couple of months without being able to make contact with them. And so just recently, within the past couple of weeks, we've shifted to another organization that's going to certify us. Her background check transferred over, so she won't have to go through all that again. We have another RSPS on the staff, so he'll supervise her credits until she can become a trainer or instructor, and then we'll have two. And then since the curriculum is almost identical, it appears the only difference is RSPS can build a Medicaid and PRSS can't. The curriculum is going to keep all of our staff, whether they're certified one way or the other, it'll keep them current. But we are going to provide 40-hour courses twice a year in the spring and in the fall for people all over San Antonio and all through the community to come to us. We're still figuring out the logistics of it, how to get folks signed up, how to deal with the financials. We're in that process right now, but we were aiming for trying to kick off our first course in October. I don't know if we're going to have a fall kickoff because of having to switch organizations, certifying organizations, and starting with this new one. But that's the plan.
Sorry. So can you just clarify, we use different acronyms here, sorry. Is it recovery support peer specialist?
Yeah,
okay.
just switch words around.
Right. And then what is the PRSS?
Peer recovery support specialist.
Okay.
And then recovery support peer specialist.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at a youth peer support specialist certification, and then we have a certified recovery support worker, and so that's a higher level of credentialing. So it'd be great to share information and resources. Thanks so much, Rich. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a couple of comments. One, if you could share it again, if it's okay to share it program wide, that would be great, because we could post that on the association website also, so other people could have some access to what's going on. All of you guys, if you have things like that, we can use it, makes it real available. The second thing is, I wonder if, as y'all are developing this, Rich, if it would be possible maybe to do those classes and make them a hybrid of virtual and live, if it's still, especially here in Texas, if we're still in the situation we're in, and it might be made available to other people around the country. And again, the association could be helpful in getting.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking to do, Rich, in New Hampshire is, so I'm at the University of New Hampshire Institute on Disability. And so, we're fortunate that we have easy access to Canvas, which is an online learning portal used for students. And so what we'll look at doing is building out the youth peer support and APG facilitator training right in that portal.
Yeah, that's one of our major challenges right now, because when we started this in February, it wasn't a virtual world. Now, not only are we going to have to offer the course online, but we're going to have to figure out how to proctor the test. How do you do a test and ensure that there's the integrity of the test is kept intact? So we're working through those.
Yeah, are you requiring any observation and kind of real-time work with individuals and groups prior to certification?
Gosh, I can't. I would have to go to the Cicada website. Has the requirements for somebody. I'm not sure off the top of my head what the requirements are for somebody who wants to do the course.
Yeah, right.
But we're mirroring a lot of what they're doing.
Right, yeah. I'd be happy to share here in New Hampshire the requirements for the certified recovery support worker, as well as what we're developing for the youth peer support specialist. So that's actually one of the documents that John was referring to that I sent him in the past couple of weeks around our training. But we're requiring some observation hours, and in fact our CRSW requirement in New Hampshire has 500 experience hours before certification, so it's pretty rigorous. So the youth peer support certification would not be that rigorous, but still fairly rigorous and include recommendations from someone in the field.
Robin, You have some recent experience with some of this, don't you? Am I mistaken about that?
The peer recovery support specialist. So yeah, I was certified in that through the state of Texas. So yeah, and it's not hard to do. The who was it? Jana McGee is the one that did my classes.
Yeah.
Actually, provision. Yeah, I don't know anything about the billing part.
What about the practicum stuff? What have you been having to do on that here in
I
Texas?
got the practicum when I worked at Lifeway. So
Oh, okay.
that was
okay.
yeah, that was a long time ago. That was not a
Okay,
big
they forwarded that for. Okay.
right.
I
Because you
thought I
have to
couldn't-
have those hours before you get state certified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the facilitators that we're using in Lifeway right now is in the process of picking up his hours. He's got all his class, and I can't remember how many hours he's got to go all total, but and this is just the beginning. I don't think this is the supervisor credential. It's just the worker, and it's adult, not adolescent. It's really interesting, Heidi, that y'all are doing this specifically around adolescents. It's really
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm
Alright.
talking unmuted.
that's all right. I read your lips.
It is, yeah, the youth certification is certainly unique. If I can share my screen, I'm happy to share the adult certification requirements as well as the youth, if you guys
Please go
want.
ahead. Do I need to enable you though?
Yeah, you just have to go to security features and allow sharing.
Uh-oh.
I hear the word enabling and I'm like, no.
Immediately. All right, where are security features? I didn't know I've not done this. I'm sorry.
So if you go to your Zoom icon, actually, I think it usually shows up when I'm the host on like to the left of participants, like along the bottom of your screen. Do you see like a security icon there?
All right, I just made you host.
Oh, and that's not necessary.
Well, you're just one of them. We're both hosts. You're a
Okay.
co-host.
So, so these are the CRSW, the Certified Recovery Support Worker. So for adults, these are the requirements here, and I can email this out to John to send to others as well. So this is just like the checklist for folks when they're applying to be certified. So they have to have documentation of 500 hours, and I can make this a little bit bigger here. 25 hours of supervision, a letter from their employer, 46 hours of education across 4 domains. So 16 hours in ethics and confidentiality, 6 hours in HIV and AIDS, 6 hours in suicide prevention. And so there is a requirement that has been waived during COVID that no more than 50% of the training is online. And 50% of the training has to be pre-approved by a number of authorizing organizations before folks engage high school diploma and a photo, and then they need to take an exam.
Do you know if NADAC is one of those organizations that does the pre-approval?
I can look it up. Do you know off the top of your head, Sean? It sounds familiar, but I'm not 100% sure.
National Association. Usually their two biggies are the Reciprocity Consortium and NADAC, but I don't know. I don't know how it's touching New Hampshire.
And then, so then for the youth peer support specialist, I'll share those training requirements here. And again, just make it a little bit bigger. Can you guys, it looks like it didn't get any bigger. Can you see this okay? Let me make it to 100%. Maybe 125. Is that too big now? So we've got online modules in recovery and resilience, the role of peer support, self-advocacy, culture, youth-led movements, ethics, and boundaries. Sorry, it's not letting me scroll down here. Cultural and linguistic competence, family-driven and youth-guided practice, systems of care, stress, trauma in the brain, sex, gender identity, gender expression, and gender orientation, adult and pediatric CPR and first aid, suicide awareness, Narcan administration, and then coaching or weekly supervision. So we refer to it as coaching, but we recognize that other organizations refer to it, you know, as supervision, as well as kind of organizational supervision from a line supervisor, mental health first aid, mandated reporting, leadership and facilitation training, peer support, skills, and communication, and that has several modules within it. Oh, and then our treatment of our evidence-based treatment that we're using in creating connections is 7 challenges, and so we require them to take an overview of the 7 challenges module as well, so that they understand harm reduction and know the fundamentals of that treatment model. And then 6 hours of addiction and recovery training, 1-day diversity and cultural competence in-person training, and then assembling a portfolio of their observation hours like coaches, coaching documentation and things like that. Any questions on any of that? I know it's a lot. Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty rigorous.
Hey Heidi, why the distinction, or what is the distinction for youth? The youth part of it, youth peer support specialists.
And so we start. What?
What is the distinction, or why is there a distinction for youth for the peer support specialist? Is that, yeah, I'm sorry, just, yeah, what is that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. Sure, that's a great question. So, so for youth peer support specialists, we're really looking at young adults who provide recovery support, but also co-occurring or mental health supports. So here in New Hampshire, we have a handful, not a ton, but we have a handful of youth-led organizations that provide peer support and lived experience in foster care, you know, mental health, and various other vulnerabilities. And so what we did is and we've utilized youth peer support in our system of care framework when youth are engaged in services like wraparound. Are you guys familiar with wraparound services? So, you know, community-based intensive supports for youth and families with high needs. And so, so our youth peer support specialists to this point in New Hampshire have primarily had experience in mental health and lived experiences other than substance misuse, right? And so we're really looking at expanding some of our youth peer support services into the recovery realm. So we currently have adults with lived experience in recovery who might pursue a CRSW credential. And so the certified recovery support worker is, you know, we envision it as another step along a career pathway. So a young person, you know, who's relatively new in their recovery might get certified as a youth peer support specialist, and then they do that for a year or two, and they decide to go and get their CRSW, and then, you know, someone might be working for a few years as a CRSW and go and get a LADAC or, you know, other credential, right? So we see it as a continuum along this career pathway in recovery. And Sean, please feel free to jump in. I know I'm talking a lot.
I think that's all great stuff. Sean, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you're doing a great job. We don't have a way to build Medicaid for youth peer support.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we just have to build it. And
Right.
You're going to have to, on
Fight.
that, you're just going to have to fight the battle. You're going to
Yeah.
have to.
Right. Right.
But it is worth fighting.
Yes.
I will tell you, as I said, there were 1,800 clients, and they were all involved with alternative peer group process. The one thing that as I hear, you know, it's all talked about, and I've watched the peer recovery process develop around the country. The one thing where dream is for it to become, to take advantage of what we learned on the community element. How do you build a community? Hanging out and being there in the clinical setting is one thing. Hanging out and being there in the living setting is another thing. Pulling it into a community that fosters itself and gives to itself and really helps in that healing and everything. That's a little bit different, and that's where APGs, you know, found some answers in the past, and we want to be able to proliferate those around. The breaking down the concepts and needs in the document we were all just looking at. It's really awesome, really helpful and everything. I would hope that everybody takes before the next session that you take some time to really go through that and look through it and see if you have questions and ideas and things like that. Because again, if this is a disease, we want to get 10 out of 10 well. And until we get 10 out of 10 well, we're either doing something we shouldn't, or we haven't figured out something we should, or both, you know. So it's always growing and learning, always. Until we hit 10 out of 10, then we can stop these things, you know.
Yeah, we would really appreciate any feedback that you guys have. You know, we know that you guys have great expertise, you know, and that the association has great expertise, and folks have just been so generous with their time and resources. And so if you have feedback or information or ideas, please let us know. You know, I would encourage everyone to create their own practice profile for their APG. And so that's one more document that I'll share if I can pull it up real quickly. So we, at the university, we were introduced to implementation science about, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 years ago. Here's the most recent version. Are you guys seeing this? It says alternative peer group practice profile at the top.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, sorry. I just stopped sharing thinking that I wasn't sharing it. So practice profiles really are grounded in implementation science. Once we were introduced to implementation science, it really transformed how we go about really providing any kind of service or practice. You know, when we were first trained, we had developed a model at the university to outreach and engage at-risk youth called Renew, and you know, have been providing Renew for 20-something years. And I remember, you know, during the implementation science training, being told, you know, if we think about implementing for the next 40 years, how is that going to change your practice? And up until that point, we had really been thinking 3 to 5 years implementation, right? And so, so now whenever we're looking at implementing any new practice, then we really start with developing a practice profile. So before we fleshed out all the training requirements that you just saw, we really went through and defined, you know, what's the outcome that we're striving for. And so with APGs in New Hampshire, we really want to create a community of young people that encourage a healthy lifestyle in a safe, socially reinforcing environment that's recovery and wellness focused. And so then what we did is we outlined these critical components on the left-hand side here, and there's like 22 components, I think. And then once we identified those critical components, then we kind of jump over here to really defining what the gold standard is. How would we know that that's happening? And then we define the emerging practice or an acceptable variation, right? So APGs that are just starting out may not achieve the gold standard, but what would be an acceptable variation as they're learning and growing in their implementation? And then we also want to define what's unacceptable. So then we define how the critical component contributes to the outcome, and then we define how would someone as an outsider, you know, if we had evaluators coming in, how would they determine that this critical component is actually being implemented? So I'll just, you know, I'll share this out with you because it is a weighty document, right? But what we did to develop our practice profile is that we engaged stakeholders, so treatment providers in youth services, as well as peer supporters, recovery coaches. You know, we have folks from the Department of Health and Human Services and Medicaid, various other partners. You know, we have, so one of our targets is to really outreach underrepresented youth, right? And so we have partners in the LGBT community participating, you know, to help draft this, and other youth services. And we feel pretty good about it. So the last thing that we're doing is really starting to fill in the resources section. So we've been working on developing some resources and essentially like an APG startup toolkit for organizations that are interested in piloting APGs in New Hampshire. And I know that that was a lot, but I'm happy to share that out with folks. But I think our model, you know, as I said, really grounded in harm reduction, and you know, and I know that many of the other APGs that I've talked to use a 12-step model, and so I think it would be really, really critical for new APGs to build out their own practice profile based on the critical elements for each organization. And now I'll stop talking.
I just want to say, Heidi, I loved that. I love it. And you're going to share that with us, that document?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I love things like that. It's a good template.
And I want to double down on what Heidi said at the very end, and that is each organization should take a look at who and what they are and what they want to be and how they want to develop and everything, and using that template as a guide, kind of flesh it out to what your needs are and what your community is, and those kinds of things. You will probably find things as you're going through it that you go, well, I think we need to do this a little different or something, you know, that kind of thing. And that's okay. Okay to take a look. It's good to have conversations because you don't want to make mistakes that are going to bite you later. And some people have made mistakes in the past and found things that didn't work, that kind of thing. In the end, our ability to take people who want to work with these APGs and get them trained to where they're truly effective. It is one thing to meet training, especially the cognitive training requirement. It's a whole nother thing to put together an APG and lead it and have people, you know, follow through and do things. It's helpful to have the training. It's imperative to have the talent, you know, so just keep that in mind as you're going through it. It's something I think it would be really cool to work with on the template also. How to spot, use talent, how to allocate it, how to administer it, etc. Things that we can work with. Other comments or ideas at this point?
I have a question, John. You know, when we're talking about billing Medicaid and insurance, is it as simple as finding a therapist who can sit in the room while we're doing meetings? Like they can be billable while we're doing support meetings?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it's that. Then you have to worry about making sure the therapist knows what you're doing and what they're doing and how it's plugged into the APG component, etc. But yeah, sometimes it can be that simple. Yeah. And I say sometimes because one of the games that the insurance companies play are different little requirements and then beating you to death, getting you to report before they ever write a check. So you have to have backup cash to get past that cash flow bugaboo in collecting from insurance. Thinking that they're going to be fair and help you and everything, don't go into it doing that, because that's not going to be typically the way it goes. It's going to be a battle. Be prepared for the battle. Have the money to fight the battle, you know. Other questions? Does anybody have a different answer for that? Some experience that was different than what I have had? Because it may well be that others have had different experiences. Anybody? Right now, the little program I'm doing with adults, we are not taking insurance, but we're sliding scale, you know. And I do tell them if they'll do the administrative side, the families will do the administrative side of getting the paperwork. I'll fill out the paperwork. I don't mind doing that. It's the getting it, sending it in, you know, all of that kind of thing. It just tears time up and makes it to where by the time you get paid, you've worked 3 times as much as what you're getting paid for. So that's how I'm handling it right now. But that's just me, and it's very small, very tight little thing. I don't have a big payroll to hit or anything like that. Other ideas or thoughts? All right. So 2 or 3 times, and one of the things that I have mentioned and we've talked about is how do we start? Does anybody have staff coming on staff that they wish was being trained right now? Does anybody have anything like that going on this call? Okay. Rich, how many guys do y'all have working for you down there? Rich, can you hear me?
Sorry, it's really loud here.
Oh, it's not loud for us, by the way, just so you know. It's not a big deal for us. How many staff do y'all have now?
I've got 15 of my program staff, and I think Rise Recovery is at 21 right now.
Okay. And the program staff, how are they assigned?
Education and experience. We look at their interests. I've got RSPS primarily in my efforts with schools, with students, with kids. I've got LCDCs who can provide a little different level of care with some data analysis, doing other things, but it just depends on their interests and their education and their experience.
Okay. Are they, I'm sorry, I misquoted my question. What do you have them doing? In other words, how are they organized right now?
Okay, I've got, essentially I've got 6 programs. We're just launched the San Antonio's first recovery high school. So right now we're in the pilot year. We're kicking off August 17th with our first class. This is a pilot year, so hopefully we're looking to launch the actual recovery high school out of our new location. We're building an $8 million facility here in town. We're gonna have classes running out of it hopefully next fall. This year we're running out of Brain Nation, but the teachers coming to us from Anne Frank Academy. We do an in-school recovery program where I've got peer support coaches in 8 different school districts. So serving students on campuses being able to do screenings and do group sessions, and then we try to aim them towards the Rise Recovery campuses. I've got direct services for youth and young adults. I've got 2 sets of folks there. There's people 18 and under and people from 18 to 35 who are directly struggling with substance use issues. And then I've got family services where we provide services for family members who are affected by their loved one's use.
Would it be possible? I'm trying to think, how do we get into making use of the technology and sharing what we're doing and what we're, it's one thing for us all to sit here and talk. It's a whole different deal to see it in action. And I was wondering, would it be possible, and this is to the rest of y'all also, I knew Rise had a lot going on. By the way, congratulations on your new building. I saw that the other day. That's real cool.
And the helpline. I don't want to forget the helpline. We kicked off San Antonio's first 24-hour helpline. For anybody struggling with substance use issues, we'll have a person answering the phone 24 hours a day.
No, I'm an alumni of Leon Valley Elementary School. I just thought I'd let you know that. So,
Cool.
would it be possible to, using a computer or a phone or something, to catch some video, some action in some of these things there? Would that be something you might could arrange that we could share at the next training process here?
Maybe. I got my hands full right now. Right now I'm doing all the MOUs and we're in grant season. So I think that's a great idea. I've just got to figure out when I'll have the time to do it.
Okay. Before I brace this with you guys, I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I'm not looking for a production. I'm looking for somebody to hold a phone in their hand and turn on video and catch what's happening, in some venue. And I'm mentioning it right, Rich, but believe me, it's true for everyone. Michelle and James, you guys got a lot of stuff happening up there. I would love to see it actually going on and have it here to be able to discuss. Anybody?
All of our in-person stuff, so much of it is done digitally on Zoom, but the in-person thing that we're doing is getting the teens together at the park once a week with their masks on to do an in-person meeting. That's been monumental, by the way. They've been starved of that for so long, so it's been extra powerful.
Well, I would love it if somebody could, you can record a Zoom. Of course, you got to get their permission and everything. It will not be posted publicly, by the way. That would be only in the training thing that we would do that. And it would not be something that we would record. But I want to get a feel for some of the things you guys are doing so that we have something to work with and start to plan and figure out what are the weak points, what are the strong points in the future. So if somebody would please step forward and just grab something on the run, during this time, I would really appreciate it. All right, we're at a stopping point. Look for the thing next week. It's coming your way. Hopefully we'll have some stuff. I love you guys. You're awesome. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, John. Thank you.
Bye-bye.